Please stand for walking meditation. I know we have some visitors here this evening, so just some brief instructions. With walking meditation, we'll hear the clappers, and at the sound of the clappers, you'll make a standing bow, and the first row will turn to the right, and the second row will turn to the left. Then at the next sound of the clappers, we'll begin walking at a slow pace with 1/2 step for each cycle of the breath. We'll continue that for about a half a minute or so, and then the clappers will sound again. We'll make a standing bow and then walk at a regular pace, following a pattern around the cushions. If those of you who are familiar with the pattern could help those who are new, that would be much appreciated. please prepare for this evening's talk. Please sit comfortably and face towards our teacher. In just a moment, we'll be reciting the Gatha on Opening the Sutra, which is found on page 8 of the Stabled Liturgy book, which should be under your cushion. Gatha on Opening the Sutra. The Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely encountered even in millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning.
All right. Just I'd like to check whoever's doing the AV, make sure the record is hit and the overhead speakers, our mics are off. It seems it's good. We're in hand. And then if we can't see each other, you are super welcome and encouraged to scooch. You can come up here, there's seats closer, or you can stay safely away. It's up to you. It's all good. But either way, thank you for being here this evening, everybody. I'm going to put my watch over here so that I don't go too short or too long. It's kind of interesting, we're in the season now where spring is, really asserting and, getting beat back a little bit, the tussle, the bustle, right? The movement of seasons. And it's important to understand that seasons aren't just something for nature in an abstract way. It's not just the forests and the weather patterns and the heat and the cold. There are seasons to history that seem to repeat, or at least rhyme. And there are seasons in our lives, early, middle, late, etc. And there are also seasons to practice. Very important to understand that there are times for a romantic flush of courtship and, oh my gosh, what is this? And this is amazing and scary and amazing and scary and amazing. You can't do anything but think about it all the time. It seems to grip you like the first flush of young love. It's really wonderful. But it doesn't stay like that, does it? And that's not a bad thing. There are other seasons to practice, and they're all really quite beautiful and quite trustable. The main thing is that we have to actually feel our practice of the Buddha Dharma is, in a way, constantly ripening and developing and integrating. And with that as the core principle, it can look different ways at different times. I would assert, as does the tradition, that at least for some substantial time, it needs to look pretty darn formal. It has to look organized in rows and rituals and liturgies and all this kind of stuff. But don't be fooled into thinking or assuming that that's some kind of a way of containing the Buddha Dharma. It certainly is not. In fact, there's no way to contain the Buddha Dharma. However, there are some helpful ways to stumble into it. We can say that. I've been discoursing of late on the Blue Cliff record when I get the chance to give a talk on a Wednesday, and I'd like to continue that trend. This is case 57 from the Blue Cliff record, featuring an old favorite, I hope, or maybe a new friend to you if you don't know, Master Chow Chow, or Joshu, as pronounced in the Japanese version. Famous teacher for a monk asked Master Joshu, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" And Master Joshu responded, "Moo." Can I get a moo, please? Moo. Yeah. So, so that's a thing. That's a thing. But that's not this case. Here we have Joshu in another of his fine moments. Joshu, if you don't know, was somewhere around the 8th century, if my memory serves, in China, a Chinese master, venerable. He lived to 120 years old, pretty solidly documented as such, because we have records. He took up an abbacy at the age of 80. That's when he started teaching. And he had 40 years of active teaching ahead of him at that point. And this was in an age and a time where the average human lifespan was quite a bit less than it is today. Nonetheless, this venerable old worthy became venerable and old. Yeah, he's a beautiful teacher, and unlike some of his predecessors that were, known for big shouts or smacks or big dramatic things, Joshu is known as the teacher of subtle, light words. He was a word person. He would speak simply and directly, and he used words as his primary way of teaching, which is a tricky thing, I can say. So he's known for having this amazing wit that just would not stop. And he could, with whatever situation was at hand, he could use it and turn it into an occasion of the Dharma. So we have one such encounter here. A monk asked Master Joshu, "The ultimate path has no difficulties. It just avoids picking and choosing. What is not picking and choosing?" Master Joshu said, "In the heavens and on the earth, I alone am the honored one." The monk said, "Well, that's still picking and choosing." Master Joshu said, "Stupid oaf. Where is the picking and choosing?" The monk was speechless. That's the koan. Now, this phrase, this opening statement, a monk asked Master Joshu, the great way has no difficulty. It just avoids picking and choosing. What is not picking and choosing? This is it would have been a very famous in his day, some 200 years earlier, in an earlier period in China. There's Master Sung Song, who died in 606, wrote this treatise called Relying on Mind, sometimes translated as Faith in Mind. And it's got this, is its opening salvo. The great way is not difficult, it just precludes picking and choosing. Goes on, it's pretty interesting. I'll give you a bit of a flavor. Without yearning or loathing, the way is perfectly apparent, while even a hairbreadth's difference separates heaven and earth. To see the great way with your own eyes, quit agreeing and disagreeing. The battling of likes and dislikes, that is the disease of the mind. Misunderstanding the great mystery, people labor in vain for peace. But mind has the totality of space, with nothing lacking and nothing extra. It's just selecting and rejecting that makes it seem otherwise. Don't pursue worldly concerns, but don't dwell in emptiness, in the peace of absolute identity. Confusion vanishes by itself. Suppressing activity to reach stillness just creates agitation. Dwelling in such dualities, how can you know identity? How can you know intimacy? It goes on like this, many pages. I commend it to you. It's a wonderful text. In fact, my first teacher, Daido Roshi, back when he was something of a nascent hippie, he was a greatest generation Navy bosun's mate, but he encountered this text somehow as a chemist he would find himself to be, and it completely turned his world upside down. So much so that he actually had copies of it printed up and he would hand them out. This is well before the internet was a thought in anyone's mind. In his name, actually, Muge Daido. Daido means great way, and Muge means not difficult. So Maizumi Roshi ended up giving him the ordination name of Muge and the precept name of Daido. So this text, even in my own training, is kind of famous. You know, it's kind of like my teacher's name. My first teacher's name, I should say. So anyway, this was from a time when the teaching of the Buddha had migrated up into China and was in this first flush romance with Taoism. And you can see, I can see in this the swirl of delight, the language of Taoism being kind of played with and integrated into the teachings of the Buddha. It in fact is this swirl, this matching between the teaching of the Buddha and the Taoist wisdom tradition that produced the love child of Chan, and that's where Zen comes from. So this is kind of drenched and dripping in Taoist wisdom, which is to be greatly respected and is integral to our way. Koans hadn't quite emerged as yet. The koans, you see, are records of the exchanges between teachers from this time and their disciples. They hadn't been codified because they were still kind of happening. Now, by the time Joshu came around, a couple hundred years later, these pioneering Chan masters of old were the stuff of legend. They towered greater than life itself. Their names were known everywhere, some of them anyway. And teachings like this were bandied about as commonplace wisdom. It had taken hold several hundred years, mind you. I mean, roughly a little longer than the United States has been the United States, for reference. I mean, that's the difference between Master Sung Song and Master Joshu. Some time goes by, right? So this querent who comes to Master Joshu and says, hey, tell me, the ultimate path has no difficulties, it just avoids picking and choosing. What is not picking and choosing? Perhaps the question makes a little bit more sense now, right? What does it mean to not pick and choose. And this can be a slippery slope. Perhaps you would hear the saying and think it means you just have no opinion about anything, that you're supposed to just be a doormat to random chance, let stuff walk all over you, perhaps, or you're supposed to be uncaring, or all kinds of ways of thinking that what this might be pointing out, and all of them seem completely at odds with the lived experience of any Zen master. Obviously, Master Joshu deeply cares about the world. He combusted a very long life serving it. Why would he do that if he's supposed to avoid picking and choosing? After all, why are you sitting here and not there? Did you pick that spot? Whoops, shame. So it can be kind of a strange cul-de-sac to get stuck in. I appreciate the querent's concern. The Great Way has no difficulty. It just avoids picking and choosing. What is avoiding? What is not picking and choosing? I just want to stand up for this monk. It takes a lot of chutzpah to ask a question like that. It really does. I mean, and I would encourage you to consider this not as a parlor trick. In fact, I can say with some certainty that for the person asking this question, it was a serious life and death question. And in fact, that's one of the necessary ingredients. Maybe this question isn't so life and death for you. No worries. You don't have to pretend it is. But you do have to find yours. And it usually pivots around what the hell? What is going on? Or who am I? What is happening here? Something like that. Who am I? Anyway, back to our example. Master Joshu said, "In the heavens and on earth, I alone am the world-honored one." Now that phrase would have been equally as famous, interestingly. That's a blues lick that was famous. It was a well-known motif, and he answered a motif with a motif. This one is said to be what the Buddha said when he attained Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, when he attained complete enlightenment. One of the things that it is said that the Buddha said. He attained complete enlightenment and then said, "In the heavens and on the earth, I alone am the honored one." And supposedly with a finger up and the other hand down. Something like that. Well, in the same way that you can hear avoiding picking and choosing and make all kinds of trouble for yourself with that, you can make trouble with this one too. I alone in the heavens and on earth am the world-honored one. I mean, aren't we supposed to be getting rid of ego here? That sounds like maybe that might be a little bit of ego hanging around if you hear it a certain way. Is he trying to assert his divine dominance over all creation? Is he saying that he's the only person of any value or worth that's ever breathed air? Well, how could this not be just an incredibly inflated ego? Well, again, mind you, right? Awakening means seeing through the limits of the small ego. Why would Joshu bring this particular phrase up at this time? It's a good question. The ultimate truth, the Great Way, has no difficulties. It just avoids picking and choosing. What is not picking and choosing? In the heavens and on the earth, I alone am the world-honored one. And I bet you when Master Joshu said that, he made it with the full force of the reality as he had experienced it. And you can't tell that from reading it, but that's how it is. When a Zen master responds reality is responding. That's how it is. Unfortunately, our monk seems to not have gotten the message. Reality responds, and he says, but that's still picking and choosing. Which, I mean, from a certain perspective, honest enough mistake. However, Master Joshu will have no coddling at this point. You stupid oaf. Where's the picking and choosing? The monk couldn't respond. The stupid oaf part, if you're going to berate someone, it's nice to be classy about it. But it's so, I sense an intimacy between teacher and student here. It's not unknown in our hallowed halls either. There's a kind of playful engagement that happens a lot, and I'm really happy that it's that way. Some communities are so serious all the time. Oh God, very, very, very serious. And just because you're doing a serious thing doesn't mean you should be like all serious about it all the time. In fact, I would say yin needs yang, yang needs yin in correct measure. On the other hand, being giddy simply won't cut it either. So the student is admonished, foolish oaf. Where is the picking and choosing? And to understand that pointer, you have to understand I alone in the heavens and earth am the world honored one. What does that really mean? What did the Buddha really communicate with those words? Or at least, what does the tradition hold up that the Buddha said? Because there's a really important pointer there. Imagine you've spent vast amounts of your life pursuing enlightenment and you finally actually realize it at great cost to yourself. Your family has abandoned you, you've abandoned your family, society you're outside of, you've thrown everything into this project, and it actually comes to fruition. After speaking of being a stupid oaf, he almost killed himself with asceticisms and all kinds of youthful mistakes in the spiritual path. He did them all, and I'm sure he was quite robust about it. But after all, he comes to realize himself and says, I alone in the heaven and earth am the world honored one. What is the truth of these words? Let's see if I have, here. Interestingly, about halfway between Master Sung Song, who died in 606, and Master Joshu, who died in 897, we have Master Yung Chia, who died in 713, about halfway between. He wrote a poem, a teaching called Song of Realizing the Way that I think sheds some useful light. When the Dharma body is realized, he writes, there's nothing at all. The original nature of all things is innately Buddha. Elements of the self come and go like clouds without purpose. Greed, hate, and delusion appear and disappear like ocean foam. When you reach the heart of reality, you find neither self nor other. And even the worst kind of karma dissolves at once. When the Dharma body is realized, there's nothing at all. Dear one, if you realize this nothing at all, you'll see quite clearly for yourself that there's no picking or choosing possible in that place. There's nothing outside it. There's nothing inside it either. Now from there, you still have to decide what you're going to do for breakfast. You still have to vote. You still have to look out upon a world that is increasingly in troubled times, and decide how will you engage with it. Please don't make a mistake and feel that anything less than that would be acceptable. It's not. But really give yourself the gift of seeing for yourself that you alone are the world-honored one. And realize for yourself that in that space and in that way, there really is no picking and choosing. There's no up, there's no down, there's no winning, there's no losing, there's no fighting, there's no peace. Don't make a nest. Don't get stuck there. If you're practicing here, I'll make sure. But realize that space. And then throw it away. May it be so.
We'll conclude with the Bodhisattva vows, also found on page 8 of your liturgy book. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our service for this evening. Are there announcements to make?
And we can just talk. Sangha circles will be starting for Ango. Look for announcements about signing up for Sangha circles, hopefully on Monday.
Any other announcements? Sangha circles, yes.
If you're
They're
wondering
always,
what they are, come see me and I'll tell you about them.
yes, Kinsey will tell you more. If you want to know more about what's happening at the temple, please visit our Facebook. There are always many activities that are going on each week, and I invite you to check out the Facebook for the latest updates. And yes.
Shokai, can you talk a little bit about Jakai? I think the Jakai cutoff day is Sunday, if I'm right. So if anyone's interested, you should explore it.
So we are forming our Jukai class for 2023. Roshi says the cutoff date is on Sunday, and I'm going to believe that. It's certainly soon. There was an orientation session a couple of Sundays ago. I believe that's available online, I think. There's still time to sign up if you want to. And basically, we have a discerning process. So you would state your interest, and then we would give you the information. Jukai, of course, for the new people is when we take the moral and ethical teachings of Buddhism and we formally become Buddhist. It's a 20-week process and it ends in a 7-day retreat. So it's pretty intensive and very transformational. I think anyone wearing one of these would attest to that. If you have any questions, just come see me later. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Please go ahead and restore this endo. Thank you.